Developers recently shared that they are adding a skill lock function to Rise of Kingdoms, which is going to make it so you can control where your skill ups go on your commanders. This is a big deal. This could save you literally hundreds of sculptures, hundreds of legendary commander sculptures, if you apply this correctly. So in this video, we're going to walk through the top 5 legendary commanders, as well as review all of the epic commanders for using skill lock. Yeah. Strap yourselves in, baby, because we're going to save you some sculptures today. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, a sponsored content creator for Rise of Kingdoms, and today we're going to help you save legendary commander sculptures. If you like Rise of Kingdoms guides that help you get value and smash your enemies, consider smashing the subscribe button for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos. Really, smash the button. Smash subscribe. So with that said, this topic is really important. The developers indicated in a recent face-to-face message that they are adding the ability to lock skills. Now, it's in testing. It may show up in a different final form, but this idea that the developers will allow us to control where skills go is critically important. Here's why. The last 4 skill ups for a legendary commander cost 75 sculptures, 75 sculptures, 80 sculptures, 80 sculptures. That's 310 sculptures. Remember, it's a grand total of 700 sculptures to expertise a legendary. So if we can cut that by what, 3/7? So 310 sculptures off that to get most of the value? Yeah, that seems extremely good, especially for free-to-play and low-pay players. So with that said, the first thing we're going to hit on here is the runners-up. The legendary commanders that don't quite make the top 5, although honestly, they're worth talking about. The first category of those commanders that are worth talking about are the ones that, hey, you should just expertise these commanders anyways. What are you doing? So, for example, Esong. It's fully 100% universally everybody agrees. You expertise this legendary first. It does not matter what your level of spend is in the game. Yes, technically, while you're leveling them up, you would want to lock the garrison skill, max the first skill, max the second skill, max the fourth skill, then the remaining points go over here. You get a little more value sooner with your Esong, but he doesn't make the list. He's an honorable mention because you should expertise him anyways. Similarly, Richard I. He's in a similar boat because if you're going to work on this commander, he's pretty solid to expertise, and even if you weren't going to expertise him, this skill up order is in the order that they unlock. You unlock the first skill, max it. Second skill, max it. Third skill, max it. Then the fourth skill, you max that. The advantage of this skill lock system in this case is that you actually could start to level them up to use them as a primary commander sooner than you would have otherwise. A similar story is true for a commander like Saladin, who makes the honorable mention list for that reason. Yes, it's good to lock on this commander. You'll lock the fourth skill. That's related to hitting cities. You're not going to do much of that. You're going to max the first 3 skills, and Saladin is a premium primary commander. Now you can enjoy that so much sooner. Previously, you had to go and max the first 3 skills before you could start leveling them up. Now, you could start leveling them up once the skill lock function is available. You can lock this skill and max these other ones. Now, of course, you still should max the first skill before you proceed, but you get the idea here. That's the first category of runners-up. The next category of runners-up for top-tier commanders to use skill lock on is just going to be our garrison commanders, okay? And garrison commanders, most players don't need. The best defense for your city really is a peace shield. We talk a lot about putting good garrison commanders on our wall because I personally have a higher than average likelihood I'm going to get rallied, and I try to get rallied. Most players aren't going to do that. Most players aren't going to be the garrison captain of a flag, with the exception of Ark of Osiris, for which this is super relevant. But the garrison commanders, often what you'll want to do, using Constantine as an example, is you'll want to lock the garrison skill so the points go everywhere else. And the reason that that's so important is that you're using them in the field, so that means every skill up you get will be relevant for field fighting, and then you do this last, so that you can go in, if you do it at all, and Constantine, by the way, as a commander, you really don't even need to take past 5-5-1-1. You could stop there. But if you go in and you max the first, second, and fourth skills, that's certainly better than what you have to do today, which was to max the first 2 and then take them to 4 stars and then hope that they don't land in the third skill and that they do land in the fourth. So that is the additional category here of I guess runners-up, I should say, not MVPs, runners-up. Another example would be a Charles Martel, same story. You'd want to lock this third skill and get all the open field combat-related stuff max first. 5, 5, lock this skill, 5. So 5, 5, 1, 5 is what you'd go for there. The next category of commander that it doesn't make the list, but we do need to talk about, is the classic original city-hitting commanders. We're talking about Frederick I, whose third skill is a city-hitting skill. We're talking about Julius Caesar, third skill is a city-hitting skill. And Mehmed, third skill is a city-hitting skill. All these commanders that are for city-hitting only, yes, they are worthy of mentioning, but they aren't premium endgame commanders that you were using universal sculptures on anyways, or at least I don't think you should be. The next category of commanders that we need to talk about, but for most players, you're not going to worry about it too much, is going to be the legendary gathering commanders. Yeah, you're going to want to skill lock on these commanders as well. Depending if you're going all in on gathering or you think you're ever going to use them for combat, I don't think you should, but assuming you're going to go all in on gathering, you might even lock the first, third, and fourth skills. Just make sure that this gathering skill gets maxed, and then you can level them up a whole heck of a lot sooner, which is a big deal. You do want to take these gatherers to level 37 as soon as possible to start getting real value, farming resources on the map every day. Card up in the top, I pull down over 30 million a day. The final category of commander that goes into our runners-up category is going to be the peacekeepers, because look, we take a look at these peacekeepers, and I'll use double C as an example. That's the one I want to use. The second skill is for smashing barbarians. Well, a lot of people use double C in the field. If you're going to use double C in the field, you'd want to max the first skill, skill lock the second skill, and then boom, max out the third and the fourth skills. That way, all of the combat effectiveness is in things that work for barbarians and in the open field against other players. That's the idea, right? So the peacekeepers are the additional category of sort of runners up here, with the exception of one that I'm going to talk about in just a minute here. However, peacekeepers like, for instance, Mulan, you'd want to do the same thing. 5-5, skill lock the third skill, and then max the fourth skill. A commander like Ethelflaed is excluded from our list today as well, because this is a commander everybody's going to expertise 100% fully free to play. So we don't need to talk about the fact that technically you could go 5-5, skill lock 5, but honestly, like, everybody expertises this commander very quickly. So let's jump right into number 5 on our list. And yes, this is a peacekeeper, and it's actually Minamoto. And that might sound a little weird, but the final skill ups on Minamoto are really expensive. So if you wanted to work on your Minamoto to use and spend less money, and you're not going to go for the expertise, I would make the argument that you would want to skill lock the Barbarian Smashing skill, go for 5-5-1, and then get the rest of the points into this last skill over here, Warlord, which is actually a phenomenal underrated debuff. I've talked about that a lot in a number of videos. Minamoto clocks in at number 5 because you actually can save some real money here, and this is a commander that you have to spend money on if you're going to get his sculptures. There's no other way to do it. So other commanders you can get fully free to play in-game. Minamoto is not one of those commanders, so I thought he does actually deserve a spot on the list. And honestly, for the early game, you're going to use him in the field and for barbarians. And so yes, he is a commander worthy of being on this list. But let's jump right into number 4 on this list, and this is an archer. The archer that we're going to be talking about is a late game commander, and that is Nebuchadnezzar. Now, the reason we've got Nebuchadnezzar on this list is that his third skill is for rallies only. And the fourth skill on this commander is actually totally beast. 15% all damage is a big deal. The chance to reduce the rage of the target by 100, 10% chance, triggers every 3 seconds. That's a big deal. So I like this commander for open field a lot. They're very strong there. And I think at 5-5-1-5, you're getting a lot of the value. Is it worth the extra 310 sculptures to go and get the expertise skill if you're never going to lead a rally with them? I mean, 500 damage factor to a single target is better than most expertise skills actually will give you. But if you could save 310 sculptures and you have somewhere else better to put them, hey, you know what? I'll put this commander in at number 4 in the list, and let's make our way to number 3. Number 3 might be a better place to put those sculptures, and that is Artemisia. Artemisia also really good in the field and is a garrison commander. For that reason, this third skill is a very strong candidate for a skill lock. You'd want to go 5, 5, 1, 5 to get all of the combat-oriented skills for battling in the open field. In addition, this is a commander where you really could take pause and decide not to get the expertise skill, because it does have a downside. Normal attacks have a 10% chance to deal additional damage factor per second, 400, which is a big deal for 3 seconds. That's 1,200 damage factor. That's a big deal. But the target gets 15% extra skill damage. For some things you battle against, that's going to be actually no downside at all. You battle against Richard and Charles, and you are going to shred them. But when you're battling against, archers like the Nebuchadnezzar we were just looking at, giving them 15% extra skill damage is kind of a big deal. So I would make the argument here that Artemisia clocks in at number 3. A great commander to use skill lock on. You could get her to 5-5-1-5, use her in the field, get a lot of value, and you don't have to go expertiser. But on the topic of getting into commanders where you really can skip the expertise skill to get most of the value, we need to make our way to number 2 on this list, and that is Tamaris. Tamaris is an often underrated commander, and I've said many times that anytime skill damage is popular in Rise of Kingdoms, we need to evaluate Tamaris' role in a skill damage meta. And the reason is that the last skill makes the target take additional skill damage. This is a big deal. This is actually a really big deal. And the reason that Tamaris is number 2 on the list is twofold. First of all, her second skill is for hitting cities only, man. Not even garrisons like strongholds, but just cities. That sucks. So if you could lock this skill and never invest in a point in it, honestly, most players will get 0 value from this skill anyways. So to have a 5-1-5-5 Tamaris would be very exceptional. On this commander, however, you might even consider locking the second and the third skill, and to try to go for a 5-1-1-5 Tamaris. The reason I say that is that you get all the poison and debuffing goodness without any of the fluff. It's the literal least amount of sculptures possible to get a really, really sick debuff rolling. Yeah, I think that a lot of players should start to consider that once we see how skill lock works and once it arrives in the game. This third skill, yeah, it's good, right? Putting more points into it is good. You can go from 10% base archer attack and a 10% defense reduction base to the target to having yet another really killer debuff. 30% defense reduction is a big deal. So I like this third skill, but 5-1-1-5 would be good. 5-1-5-5 is better. And the expertise skill for 310 sculptures, all you are getting is 10% attack and 10% counterattack and 10% attack reduction for cavalry that are attacking you. I mean, like, I get that that's a swing of like 30% of goodness in total, but it feels very minimal to me for the amount of sculptures you're going to invest. So this is a commander that makes number 2 on the list for top commanders to skill lock, but the number 1 commander is a commander that pretty much every player in the game considers at some point in time. Literally every player looks at them and goes, should I invest in that commander? And that commander is none other than Guan Yu. Number 1 on the list. Why is that? First of all, the second skill is related to hitting garrisons. Well, guess what? Most players are just doing open field combat. They're not hitting garrisons. They're not going to lead a rally against a structure with Guan Yu, and they might not even be swarming an arc yet with Guan Yu. They just want all the open field goodness. So you want a 5-1-5-5, and that is a beast, Guan Yu, for the open field. The other reason that Guan Yu is number 1 on the list is that his expertise skill is not all that amazing. Honestly, it really isn't. Yes, it is nice to get the march speed boost when you leave a structure. That's nice. That's nice. But is it critical for open field effectiveness? No, it's really not. It's nice that Guan Yu gets a 15% damage boost for skill damage for 3 seconds when you get a shield. But the thing is, your Guan Yu might not even be getting shields. And if he is getting shields, it might not even be timed correctly to get value from the skill damage being boosted. So this is a commander that a lot of players are going to reconsider whether or not they expertise him at all, as a function of this skill lock capability being added potentially at some point. I would argue, I'm going to guess that it'll be maybe mid to end of February before we would get it at the earliest. Maybe it's mid-March. But even still, we should consider, if you're thinking about going and investing in Guan Yu, you really should take pause. If you are in a pinch for legendary commander sculptures, if you think you would want to save 310 legendary commander sculptures for a nearly max effectiveness Guan Yu, then you would really consider waiting for that skill lock function to come out before you invest any of the sculptures past this point. You can max the first skill, have a 5-1-1-1, and then just wait. Wait until skill lock comes available. And if you weren't going to expertise them, if you were not going to go and do that, then you can guarantee you get all the good stuff over here. And I know there are hundreds, thousands of players that are going to benefit from that. I've received messages from dozens upon dozens of players that talk about their Guan Yu skill ups. I mean, yeah, this is going to be really big value for a lot of people. Now, if we go and get a look at the epics, by the way, all of the same things that we said about categories of commanders that you'd want to skill lock still applies. So, for example, your garrison commanders, you're going to want to skill lock the garrison skill if what you want to do is use them in the open field. That's true of Olji Mundok, that's true of Sun Tzu, and I actually would argue that Sun Tzu is probably number one on my list as the most important epic that you might use a skill lock on, because, yeah, using your skill lock on Sun Tzu means you get all the combat effective stuff, and of course I can put them on the screen so I'm showing that. That includes Herman, that includes Kusunoki. The same is true for the city-hitting commanders, by the way, where you're going to want to lock the city-hitting skill, and I would argue maybe even number 2 on my list for the most important commanders to skill lock might actually be Osman for the epic tier. Osman is a true beast in the open field for raw damage, and if you can lock this very strange city-hitting skill, which doesn't even work until you've been hitting a city for more than 30 seconds, yeah, you don't get a single skill up in there and you're good to go. That seems fine to me. The thing that I'll say that's different about all these epic commanders is that you will probably expertise all your epics within the first 6 to 9 months of the game anyways, so it's not quite as big a deal here. Baibars is another great commander where, like, yeah, you're going to want to skill lock this. Similarly, we can get a look at peacekeepers like Belisarius and Boudica, where you'd want to skill lock the damage to barbarians, although I would make the argument the damage to barbarians is really good, and you're going to go back for that anyways. And Boudica even is a commander that I think everybody should still pick Britain as their starting civilization, so that they get this commander for the 20% bonus experience from defeating barbarians, which it comes from the base level, by the way, of Boudica's second skill. All that to say, you skill lock that second skill, and you could do that one last if you really wanted. I think that's a fine choice. The final category of skill lock commanders at the epic tier that we just need to talk about real quick is going to be the gathering commanders, which sounds a little bit weird, but let me tell you something. Joan of Arc is a beast commander, okay? She's a total beast for combat, and I would actually make the argument that if you wanted to use Joan of Arc right away for combat, the thing you should be doing is to skill lock the second and the third skill. Yes, both of them. You skill lock both of these skills because a 5-1-1-5 is going to be absolutely monster. This skill is actually better than the skill that you see on a lot of legendary commanders. It's really strange. And that the reason I think that's the case is that this skill is worse than what you see on almost any commander. Like, this might be the actual worst non-city hitting skill in the game right over here. So that's why the fourth skill is so good. So 5-1-1-5, Joan of Arc is really good. Again, you're going to expertise all these epics anyways, and you're going to do that very quickly. But if you want the most combat effectiveness, that's how you would go and get it. The final, I guess, commander that we can talk about from a gathering perspective that actually is really important here is going to be Matilda. You know, honestly, she is a true beast paired with Joan of Arc. Yeah, Joan primary, Matilda secondary, card up in the top. If you want to make this march, use all siege units in Canyon. It's astonishingly good. And you may be like, Chisgule, what the heck are you talking about? Well, this skill gives you 60% of stats. This is an epic commander, people. And it is giving you 60% of siege stats? Yeah. No, seriously. You can use Joan Matilda. It's beast. It's super beast. Now, there are other gathering commanders that you will want to skill lock on. For instance, now we're leaving the epic tier, but Constance is going to be a really great example. These are commanders you're never going to use for combat. So you're absolutely going to want to skill lock the combat skills, like this first skill over here, and even the third skill, which is troop load. And then you can max the second skill and the fourth skill. That'll work really, really well for you. You can also level them up sooner. I think that's a great choice. Same sort of thing is going to be true with Gaius. You know, you're going to skill lock the first skill. You're not using them for fighting. You max the second skill. But these are all commanders that, honestly, you're gonna get a lot of sculptures for very quickly. You might feel like you don't have them fast enough at the start of the game, but trust me, those sculptures will arrive. I will touch very briefly on commanders I didn't otherwise talk about. That way people know I didn't forget them. Okay, so we'll talk about the commanders we didn't yet talk about. Hannibal Barca doesn't have an endgame role, so, you know, whatever you're doing here, I don't know. Expertise him for the early game, but then his role fades off very, very quickly. Arguably, you could still use him in the Arc of Osiris in the middle for debuffing, and he's not bad for that, but his role will fade. I didn't talk about Khan because 5-5-1-1 is really great, and then it doesn't really matter where the skill ups go. Technically, you might lock the fourth skill, technically, because once you get below 50% for most people battling in the open field, they're going to head back to their city. I didn't talk about Edward of Woodstock because all his skills are good in the open field for combat. I didn't talk about Attila because you probably want to expertise this commander, but I guess you could lock the garrison-related skill, and that would be a fine choice. But honestly, if you're going for Attila, by the time he's rolling around in the game, you expertise Attila, you expertise Takeda, use them in the field, and enjoy beast mode. I didn't talk about YSS because he's a garrison commander. By the time you're using him, he should be expertised. I didn't talk about William because you can invest in his skills in order, which is really great. Same is true of Ramses. You can invest in them in order, which is fantastic. You can go 5-5, and then the remaining skill points on El Cid, it kind of doesn't matter where they go. If you're not using him for rallies, I guess you could lock this last skill, but honestly, skill lock's not that important for El Cid. If we look at Takeda, you could skill lock the second skill and the fourth skill and try to max out this third skill, which will scale with how frequent your active skill is used. But honestly, every skill on Takeda is beast mode. They're all amazing. So skill lock for this commander, it's kind of weird. You want to expertise him. Theodora, you could theoretically use a skill lock. You could lock the second skill and the fourth skill, and you could max the first and the third, which have open field relevance. But honestly, we're talking about using Theodora in the open field at 5-1-5-1. That's a weird conversation. Charlemagne, who's using Charlemagne anyways? I guess you could lock the third skill because it's for rallies only, but nobody's using Charlemagne. Nobody is using Charlemagne. Cyrus the Great, you don't need to skill lock. All the skills are fantastic. You can unlock them in order. Lu Bu is a city-hitting commander. Nobody's using Lu Bu really, so I don't know. You could lock the city-hitting skill. That would definitely be better. The thing is, he's just okay. He's the same category as Julius Caesar and Freddy. I wish they were more relevant. They aren't. If this was for strongholds and cities, he would be more relevant. I didn't talk about Chandragupta because this is a commander you probably should be expertising anyways. I think that is worthwhile on this commander. There's a lot that's tied into his blessing mechanic, and his blessing gets much better with the expertise skill. Theoretically, you could make an argument you wouldn't need to do that. You could do a 5-1 skill lock the second skill, 5-5 commander here, and get some value. But I think he's probably somebody you should be expertising. Leonidas, you can invest in these in order. Technically, you might want to lock the third skill and prefer your points land in the fourth. But this is not a commander you were going to take to expertise anyways. So skill lock doesn't feel to me like the biggest deal on this commander. Wu Zetian's a garrison commander. I think we've pretty much covered everybody there. If you enjoyed this video, do me a huge favor, throw a like on here. Consider subscribing for those daily Rise of Kingdoms videos that help you get value and smash your enemies. And if you're looking for more guides on commanders, hey, we have guides on literally every commander in the game. So I'll have a card up in the top for our commander playlist. Heck, maybe multiple cards. One for the epic playlist and one for the 2020 and 2021 guides. Yeah, it's 2021. Crazy how that happened. Until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom.